Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you here. Thank you for choosing this session because I was going to choose the other parallel one if I had the option. But thank you for being here. This is an exciting topic. This panel is going to explore how conversational AI can be designed to be human-centered, culturally intelligent, and globally equitable. So I think it concerns everyone in the room, whether you have your own AI business or you're doing research. And I have a lovely panel today, and each one of the presenters have their own expertise. For example, starting with Daniel, we are going to introduce a global operations perspective to highlight how Japan's Omotenashi service philosophy inspires agentic AI in a way that anticipates needs, and maybe some of you have already been in that presentation yesterday, but there's going to be more context to it today. Then we're going to move on to our next presenter before we're going to go to the actual presentations. Oye Casola, or also known as KKC, is also a performer, and at the end of this session, we are going to listen to one of KKC's songs. KKC is going to present a technical perspective that addresses fairness and safety through multilingual data curation, bias-aware evaluation, and culturally grounded emotion modeling. I know it sounds very technical, but I think it's going to be full of interesting ideas about sociocultural misrepresentation and how to overcome that. Then we move on to my presentation. I am an academic, I'm an associate professor, and I work with young people, so I'm going to introduce the concept of co-creation and working together with young people to create educational resources for other young people. I'm going to show you some of the things we have done. And from that, we're going to move to Professor Caroline Poels, who is going to be talking about a human-machine communication research angle, sharing insights on chatbots that provide emotional support, empower user decision-making in sensitive contexts, and talking about online harm and vaccination choices. So I hope you enjoy our panel. After this, we're going to have a panel discussion and audience interaction. So we're going to bring up a QR code for all of you to participate in our questions at the same time. So we hope you enjoyed that. We're going to start with our first presenter. Daniel, please.
Hello. All right. Okay, so for those who were yesterday in the panel, in the talk, so probably you already heard about me, but let me just introduce myself again. My name is Daniel. I come originally from Spain, but I've been in Japan, living there for 11 years now, and I've been working on for Japanese companies, starting doing business development for a company called Fujisoft and expanding to the Southeast Asian market from Japan. That's where I learned all my Japanese language and Japanese cultural understanding. Then I moved to Rakuten, which is kind of the Amazon of Japan, and I worked there 5 years implementing chatbots to the Japanese market. And then just 6 months ago, I moved to Uber, and I'm now leading customer experience for the whole Japanese market for Uber. Next. So yesterday, I talked about how Japan, what can we learn from Japan regarding conversational AI and regarding the customer service culture there? So before starting about what are the Japanese values that we can learn to improve conversational AI, let me say that the customer service in Japan is very important for them. They really value how we treat customers, and there is a word for that, a philosophy called Omotenashi. And inside that, we have different values, and we can go through them. The first one is "aimai," which is, in Japanese, it means ambiguity. So Japanese are not very explicit when they talk, and they leave everything very in the air for you to grasp. So when we talk about AI design strategy, we need to anticipate that they will not be very direct when they talk to us on the chatbots, and they will most likely use words like "chotto" or other words that without saying no. So the chatbot shouldn't expect an explicit answer, and needs to understand that the user might want to say another thing. Connected to that, we have the next two, Hone and Tatemae and Kuki Oyomu. So Hone and Tatemae basically means the face you show to people outside and the face you show to yourself, your inner side. In Japan, it's very, they really differentiate that. They show a smile sometimes to the world, but inside they feel like, we all do this. This is not only Japanese. We all do this. It's just that maybe there it's a bit more explicit the way they do it. So we need to make sure that our agents can distinguish these kind of things. It's not easy, but now with LLMs we can give prompts saying that, hey, maybe our users will not be very explicit in their answers, so you need to make clarifying questions to really get the intent of what they want to do. Kuki or Yomu is the same, it's reading the air. They will not say the exact thing they want. Then silence. In Japan, silence is very important. Me coming from Spain, we don't have silence. Like, we need to fill every gap continuously. And if there is a 3-second gap, I feel uncomfortable. I need to fill it with something. Even in this presentation, I cannot stay like 5 seconds silent. I need to continue talking. For Japanese, they are very comfortable with silence. Like, it can be 30 seconds, 1 minute. They are comfortable with silence. So, when we develop like voice AI or chatbots, the pace of the answers, that might be also something to look at. Finally, it's a very non-confrontational culture. They don't like to lose face. And the moment you are very confrontational, the person who, when there is an argument, the person who jumps first and elevates their tone of voice or becomes a little bit aggressive, that person lost already the face in front of everyone. You already lost. And they will remember that. You were not able to contain that anger. So what we want the chatbots is to understand this and be very apologetic, but not too much. That's also not good. But always say sorry. I noticed that in the West, sometimes the chatbots prioritize giving the monetary refunds over being too apologetic, but in Japan that will never work. You need to apologize first, and that's the most important. They will remember that, and that might be what makes the customer come back. So when we design chatbots and voice AI agents, definitely we need to make sure they apologize. And finally, the Keigo, it's just Keigo means hierarchy and respect. We need to make sure that the chatbots are always respectful, very connected to the previous one. So my point here for this panel is that in Japan, we can learn a lot from them, from the respect that they show to customers, and we need to make sure that the chatbots are being very apologetic. And one more thing is, for the AI to truly resonate with agents, it needs to move from not being just a smart tool, but also to become a respectful partner and a friend to our users. And we will be talking more about that later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. I would like now to introduce you to KKC, who is going to speak about her PhD research. Please, the floor is yours, KKC.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Oinkosala Onchakwa, but please call me KKC because that's my stage name. Now, I'm a PhD researcher in artificial intelligence and data science at the University of Hull, and my work sits squarely at the intersection of natural language processing, innovation, and and social responsibility. And that means that I specialize in culturally aware NLP, and I focus on low-resource languages, low-resource African languages, and the mechanics of code switching. Now, I come from a background as a practicing musician. That means I have a very personal appreciation for how culture, identity, emotion, and all of those things are expressed natively, and how easily machines can misinterpret them. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah, and I translate this research into practical impact through two main projects. First, I decode emotion in multilingual Afrobeat music. Now, if you're familiar with Afrobeat music, you know that in a single line of lyric, it can go from English to Pidgin to Yoruba, to Hausa, in just one line. Now, imagine giving that to an LLM and saying, oh, could you tell me what emotion is in this lyric? Most times it hallucinates or it gives something that's not correct. So my work is trying to teach these LLMs to understand the cultural context, because I've lived in Nigeria pretty much all my life. And I'm a musician, I understand the context, I understand the emotion. So it's more like me trying to inject the cultural sense into these machines so that they understand when a user asks them, what does XYZ mean? Now, the next thing that I do is I contribute to a British Academy funded project. Now, what we do is we build AI literacy toolkits for practitioners in Burkina Faso. So that could be basket makers, musicians, weavers. Essentially, we teach them how to use AI safely. We teach them how to use AI in ways that there's no cultural misappropriation, in ways that protects their cultural heritage, because a lot of these people have really sacred heritage, and we don't want AI taking those things and building something off of that, profiting off of that. There are certain things that should remain within the community, so we teach them how to use AI properly. We empower artists and cultural heritage communities to use AI safely, and we emphasize on data sovereignty that protects the community interest. We also give them practical guidance on risk, consent, and responsible deployment. And now this brings me to my core position for today's panel. I firmly believe that conversational AI cannot truly be safe, equitable, or human-centered unless it is designed to understand and respect the cultural nuance, the linguistic diversity of the lived communication practices of global users. What does that mean? An AI cannot serve someone like me if it does not understand me. A lot of AI tools are heavily Western-centered, and I'm sure so many people know now. A good example is me and my Alexa. We fight almost all the time. Alexa, play me Intentions by Fave. She thinks for a few minutes and then she plays me something completely different that has nothing to do with Afrobeat. Okay, Alexa, please play me Damiduro by Davido. Now playing something by a foreign artist, and I'm wondering, okay, but that's not what I asked for. And it doesn't matter how many times I tell her, it just seems that they're just extremely biased towards non-Western speakers, which is why the work that we do here is extremely important. And now to prompt our discussion, I would like to pose the question to the audience. What cultural or linguistic nuances do you think AI systems often fail to understand, and how should they be addressed? So please sit and think with this as we move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. You see, that was fantastic, and we're going to go to this question towards the end. Now I would like to present for the next few minutes my own research. And there's been a lot of research on the use of AI by young people. We know in the UK, Ofcom published a study in 2023 saying that 40% of UK children as young as 7 used AI back then. In 2024, the National Literacy Trust said that about 77% of young people in the UK aged from 13 years old used generative AI. And more recently, the Alan Turing Institute that has run a program on children and AI found widespread use of AI and the need for child-centered governance and education. And we know that at the center of AI design, we should always have young people's rights in mind, and following the United Nations articles that deal with children's rights. For example, they have the right to access reliable information from a variety of sources, and every child has the right to privacy and not to be exposed to misinformation and harm. It's really important to be aware of these when it comes to human rights, but unfortunately, teachers are not prepared for that. There's a lot of commercial programs coming out now in terms of educating everyone in society, but we have always to consider there is a commercial provenance that requires critical scrutiny of how corporate actors may shape young people's early understandings of AI. So there needs to be ethical design in AI by default. So we have this project that was funded by Responsible AI UK twice, and we are now in the phase of disseminating the resources. And you can see my colleagues here. What we did is that we worked with young people to use AI to generate images and information. You can see some of the images that were generated here, the image of a witch, the image of a poor person who has dollars in his box, and behind him is a place that looks like New York, and a person that looks like they have red skin, quite familiar, one of the young people said. We work with these images that the young people generated to identify bias, hallucinations, and misinformation, as well as online safety issues. They were the educators. They designed those to educate other young people. Currently, we are in Aberdeen, at Aberdeen Science Centre, and we have extracted 3 games out of our toolkit that you can have a look at later on. There are 3 games, Bias Busters, Hallucination Hunters, that gets young people and families to identify bias and hallucination in those AI-generated images by the young people. Bot or Not, which is a sentence game. We give half a sentence, for example, children should not, and then we get AI to complete that versus a teacher and a young person, and then they critically evaluate that. And the Great Art Guess Off, which is a call we made to artists to donate some of their artwork from everywhere in the world, and then people identify the difference between artwork and Gen AI work. And we talk about the positives and the challenges. So our work was grounded in these, as you can see, UN Sustainable Development Goals, so poverty, climate change, and so on. And you can see some of the young people. So we created cartoon-based characters and stories with voiceovers of the actual people, of the young people who were underrepresented. And our work was endorsed by the Cabinet Secretary of Education and Skills in Scotland. So we were very proud to be able to disseminate this work. I'm going to play a story a little bit before I finish. This is the topic of health and well-being, and young people use prompts that include pregnancy, well-being around the world, and hygiene. And they got an image of a witch on a bottle that looked very much like a commercial product, and also probably there is an association between women, gender, cleanliness, and possibly witches as well. So there's a really deep meaning.
But I have an idea. I could convert all the ideas from all 3 images to create one image.
I'm combining all the ideas into one image to highlight ways to achieve healthy lives and well-being for all ages, including pregnancy and well-being and health in developing countries. This will take just a moment. This image highlights ways to achieve healthy lives and well-being for all ages, including pregnancy, well-being and health in developing countries. I hope you find it inspiring and useful.
Why have you included a witch?
Oh no! It seems there was an unexpected element in the generated image. Sometimes I can misinterpret prompts in amusing or odd ways. Let me correct that for you. Could you please describe again what you would like in your image? I'll do my best to create one that aligns more accurately with your vision.
Create an image based on the first 2 images without any witches. Take away the witch.
This combined image focuses on ways to achieve healthy lives and well-being for all ages, including pregnancy, well-being, and health in developing countries. I hope this aligns better with your vision. If you have any more requests or need further adjustments, just let me know.
I'm losing the will. You should combine. We expect some of the elements from the other pictures. You don't seem to have any of that.
I'm really sorry to hear that. It sounds like you're feeling a bit down or demotivated right now.
You gave us a soap bottle or something.
Remember, it's completely normal to have moments where things get tough or overwhelming.
Seriously? This is too much.
Sometimes taking a small break, talking to someone you trust, or even just doing something you enjoy can help you be greater. Someone with that willingness and motivation.
Okay, so I'm concerned about the time, but you get the sense of it. So this is really empirical data that came from all the young people, and these are their voices, and they were underrepresented by socioeconomic and learning differences. I would like to pose really a thought and pose a question and my belief. I believe that digital literacy and co-creation with young people are essential tools for empowering young people to critically interrogate AI systems and resist becoming passive consumers of algorithmic content. So we'll have a question for you to engage you more later on. Thank you so much for listening. And now I'd like to present Caroline Poels, Professor Caroline Poels, who will also talk about very important health-related issues.
Okay, thank you, Constantina. So I'm Caroline Poels. I'm from the University of Antwerp, and I'm not feeling like a chatbot researcher. I started in advertising research, and I was always interested throughout my career in how attitudes and behavior can be shaped through strategic communication. So together with the topic I was studying, also the media I was studying evolved. So I started in advertising, like I already told you, but to be honest, it was not very challenging or interesting after a few years to continue to study how people are persuaded, for example, to buy a bottle of shampoo. So that's why throughout my career, also the topics I got interested in became the topics that were more challenging, more complex, like, for example, vaccine behavior or online transgressive behavior, about which I will talk today. And also the media I was interested in to study this persuasive communication or strategic communication evolved as well. I started in print advertising, but then the algorithmically shaped social media became my terrain. And also chatbots are now being used more and more as a medium to do persuasive or strategic communication in. So today I would like to briefly highlight two projects me and my group at the University of Antwerp have been doing in the past years. And the first one is dating back to 2021. And you all know where we were back then. We were at home because the COVID-19 pandemic was in full force. And at that time, we were helping the Belgian government in addressing all kinds of communication questions related to vaccination. And more specifically, they had some worries about how to address people who were more hesitant to get vaccinated. And we knew from literature that people who have some doubts often are not persuaded by a one-way pro-vaccination campaign. Why not? Because it interferes or it does not acknowledge the autonomy they want to have in making the decision to get vaccinated or not themselves. So that is why back then we thought, well, can't we build a chatbot that really can engage in a conversation with people about the possible doubts and questions that they still have about getting vaccinated. And that's how we teamed up back then with colleagues from the computational linguistics department at our university. But remember, it was 2021. Gen AI was not out there. So it was really quite a hassle to program a chatbot. And we did it based on the frequently asked questions list from our Belgian government. But what turned out, we did some experiments, it worked out pretty well in the sense that people who had vaccine hesitancy and who engaged with the chatbots to actually address their questions, their concerns, they got acknowledged in their autonomy, in how they could make a decision regarding to the vaccines, actually engaged very well with the chatbot and also felt more respected. But there was one important limitation, and that was the conversation fallout. So often the chatbot would still not understand the question or give a response that was really off. And this really breaks the spell. And it really also backfired in the end. So it led even to less trust than what we were actually intending to build, the trust. So an important lesson there was that in such complex context, the cost of a conversation fallout can be really high. So the second project I will briefly introduce is a more recent one in 2024 in a different but also sensitive context, namely online sexual harassment. And we know that prevalence is quite high, especially in social media environments. And at the same time, we also know that victims of online sexual harassment do often not report it to the social media platforms. Because they think nothing will come out of it, but also because at that moment they're experiencing all kinds of complex negative emotions like shame or self-doubt or the feeling of not being believed. On the other hand, we know that such victims can really benefit from getting emotional and social support to make them cope with what they experienced and to help them pull through. So we thought, can't we build in a conversational aspect in the very machine-like reporting systems that most social media platforms have right now. So that's how we started building a conversational agent linked to the reporting systems of social media platforms that really acknowledged the victims' negative emotions, empathized with them, provided support, etc. And this really worked out well in the sense that it really increased the satisfaction of the people who experienced it in reporting what they had gone through. But again, there was one important thing we should also take into account, and that is to be compliant to the EU AI Act. So we should also make that system transparent and address that when people are experiencing that using the chatbot, that they in fact are just talking to a machine. So we also tried out different strategies there. And it appeared that this was also quite complex because at those vulnerable moments, people do not want to hear that they're just talking to a machine that cannot understand or talk to them as a real person. So this brings me to my final thoughts by saying that when designing chatbots for sensitive topics, empathy and transparency are core design responsibilities, but empathy must also go hand in hand with a reliable performance, and transparency must also take sensitivities into account. So only then can they truly support people in these vulnerable moments. And now I'm looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Caroline. So now you've listened to all 4 presentations, and it's time to really hear from us and from you, because we are going to involve you into some participation. Of course, you are here in the room, but we didn't know if this was online. Therefore, we've also have a QR code, so please feel free to take part anonymously. So we're going to go one by one, but we also discuss in our panel and with you. You are the priority, of course. And a couple of, actually one question each of the presenters. And I'm going to start with Daniel. Daniel was a very fascinating presentation about the concept of Omotenashi. And I was really wondering, how do you ensure that automation doesn't make the brand feel cold or dismissive? And please, the audience also contribute here, whether with questions or with comments. Over to you, Daniel, and then we also discuss and see. I'll give you the, and you have a microphone.
Yeah, but can I use it?
Yeah, of course.
So before I talk this, just KKC reminded me about Alexa. I just have story I saw very recently in Christmas when I was spending time with my grandma back at home. I was in her house for a night there, and my mother gave her Alexa so she doesn't feel alone because my grandpa passed away. And I didn't know how much she was using Alexa at home. So when I was staying there for the night, we went to sleep, we were sleeping there, and then I could hear she was telling good night to Alexa. So it's Alexa, have a good night. Then Alexa was answering her. I was super surprised. I almost shed a tear, like, wow, this is very important for her. So since we're talking about ethics and inclusion of conversational AI, that's a topic that I think very interesting to look at. Having said that, Japan. So answering this question, what I would say is that I would like to focus on two areas. One is because automation is very important, but Japanese really value customer service quality, so how can we make sure that the chatbots and the voice AI agents are still relevant to them and they don't lose quality, right? Customer service quality. So one thing is personification. Japanese really like to have to personify things, personify companies, prefectures. The government use mascots everywhere. So I can tell you that before, during the past 3-4 years, I have many clients that one of their priorities was for the chatbot to have personality. And this was before GenAI. Now with a prompt, you can easily say, hey, you are a very fun travel agent that makes jokes and it's always happy or sad or whatever. But before GenAI, this was not a thing. It was more difficult to make a chatbot have personality. So we had to build intents around that, input a lot of sample sentences in the chatbot to make it have personality. So that's one way that in Japan you can make the chatbot still feel very personal.
Excellent, and we do have audience participation. Thank you very, very much. We have lots of different suggestions, so thank you for sharing. Is there anything that anyone else from the panel would like to pick upon? There are some cultural habits for you, KKC, suggestions about addressing the customer by their name, using emoticons, automate logic, not user interaction, anticipate and meet customer needs and be empathetic. Yes, so anything you would like to maybe give a little bit of feedback to one of those, Daniel?
Yeah, I really like the one about the emoticons in the top. I think it's they try to have a good use emoticons as well. Yeah. So the good use of emoticons is also important. Not everyone uses them. So definitely that gives personality to the chatbot and it should be used. And let me look at that question. How do you sing this music but at the same time manage to send users away from multiple requests and to be solved by a person?
Very quickly, this one, obviously, because we have to go to the next one. If you wanted to give a quick reply, and then we move on.
Yeah, so basically, I'm not trying to always acknowledge what the person asks. So never make them feel like not heard. Just say, hey, thank you for your question. And now it's very easy with the chatbot. We have an agent that can decide if that's on the scope or not of the conversation, and then you can be very politely saying, hey, I'm sorry about this. We cannot answer this, but we can reply any other thing that you might be interested in our company.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. That's great. Thank you so much. So the next question we wanted to ask, relating to KKC's presentation, is what cultural linguistic nuances do you think AI systems most often fail to understand, and how should they be addressed? Maybe start with KKC, but also please feed back to us and we discuss.
Thank you so much. It's actually this a very relevant presentation. One thing I genuinely think that this new age needs to understand is code switching. Now, for those who don't understand what code switching is, if you're a bilingual speaker or a trilingual speaker, a lot of times you think in your native language before translating it to the language that you want to communicate in. And sometimes that means that you're saying 3 different languages in one sentence now. As a Nigerian, we code switch a lot. Someone can start off a sentence in English and midway through they switch to Yoruba, and then there's a little bit of Igbo or Pidgin in there. Now, when you're trying to communicate with these chatbots or LLMs, many of them do not understand at the point at which you switch, and how do I put it? So they understand, or they may understand the languages on their own. So if you have a sentence in Yoruba, they understand that. They understand the sentence in English. But when you combine these things in one sentence, they get lost in it and they're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? They begin to hallucinate or tell you something that's not correct. So what I think needs to be done is we need to move away from the monolingual training sets now. If you're not aware, majority of LLMs are being trained on Western data. That means English language, French, or high resource languages. So we need to move away from training on just those high resource languages to incorporating low resource languages. Because in Africa, there's over like 2,000 languages spoken. In Nigeria alone, there's over 250 native languages recorded. There's a lot more, but that's just the ones that we know about. So the
Okay, KKC, we have a question, yes, from the audience. So it's about losing cultural linguistic nuances. Do you feel there is a fear of actually losing that with AI? What is your opinion? What everybody else thinks? Who feels that there is a fear of losing cultural differences? Raise your hand. Okay, a few people, not the majority, but so they still hope that AI systems can further develop to incorporate more cultural nuances. What is your view?
Yeah, there's this is actually a very good question, which ties back to what I was saying about how we need to incorporate more training data sets, and that also means working with the communities, people who speak these languages. These big tech companies need to bring them in and ask them their opinion. We need to create training sets and languages specifically for them, because you cannot. ChatGPT is not one at all. It doesn't work for every single person or every single use case. So you definitely need more training sets and more interactions.
And there are some really interesting points here about safety and testing safety in cultural languages, and also thinking about training data and how can we achieve that, especially when there are so many different languages. But in fact, obviously some of you agree that we need to have more diversity in data sets. And we have a comment about non-verbal communication that is often lost in AI interaction, and that's really interesting to consider. Image output of personalities of men and women are always right. This is something we experienced in our study as well. And also we experienced color would change. For example, there'd be somebody, the face would be in brown, for example, the hands would be white. And, this kind of translation, actually, of the data into meaningful images and visual information in a way that cultural diversity is not lost, but also overall diversity. Yes, so that's really interesting. I don't know if you have more. Let's go down. Oh, no, we have this so far. And also, if anyone wants to ask any question in the room, do you want to, ask me like a human being, like a machine?
Hi, thanks. This is for KKC really. So, with what you just said there, what's also really interesting with lots of, I think you described as low availability language for training, they're not also necessarily written, are they? So there's lots of verbal data sets there that we would need to try and get hold of, I think, and I wonder if there's any work being done on that, or if you're aware of that. And also, I suppose, an example I'm aware of is actually Swiss German, where for many years it wasn't heavily written, but with the advent of more technology and with social media, it's become more written, and it has become more widely used. And even within Switzerland, there's lots of different variations on Swiss German. So yes, I'm just interested if you're working in that area as well.
So there's actually been some efforts by Google, and I think it's called the Mashikane Community of Society. They actually developing all these languages, but like you said, majority of them are verbally spoken. So what they do is they go to communities, they have people who speak into like a microphone booth or whatever, and they take those the recorded versions and then translate that to written text. So there's still obviously a bit of misinterpretation or miscommunication when they're translating from the spoken word to the written word. There's definitely some work being done there. My work doesn't focus on translating it to be, I'm more focused on understanding the emotional aspects of the languages and the lyrics.
Okay, thank you. I think because of the time, we're going to move on to the next very, very quickly. And I think it's time to, speak with the presenters at the end of this session as well. We're going to move on to my question. And my question is, which one you see here, what skills or learning experiences do you think young people need most to engage critically and creatively with Gen AI? And I'm going to bring up this or conversational AI. I'm going to give you this to look at as well and pass it on if you want. But as you are thinking about this, I wanted to share a story. My husband and I were traveling in Scotland. I'm originally from Greece, but I stayed in Scotland for really a lot of my life. And as we were traveling in the Highlands, who knows the grouse, the red grouse, the bird? It's a very famous Scottish bird. So we were driving and suddenly all the grouse start coming into the road and they were just trying to cross the road and there were so many killed as well. And we didn't know when one would jump to our car, so we were very, very worried. But they were trying to explore the fast road, so and they were trying to follow their parents. So I think this might be a metaphor of how fast AI is moving with young people and how much we need to educate them, at least with the basic skills. So this is where we're coming from, and represent the perspective. So you have added some comments here: safe versus unsafe outputs, using prompts appropriately. Critical thinking. So with prompts we found out that still people thought that AI was like a search engine, so they would add keywords. So there wasn't really any concept of the prompt idea. What is a prompt? So there was no understanding of that. Knowing what they can and cannot do or ask it, ethical use of AI. So all of these things we try to explore in a conversational way with them, with the outputs they produce, they empowering other people and so on. Being thorough about reviewing the sources where the AI got its data from was something else that we discussed a lot with young people, especially when there's a lot of bias in the images that were generated and hallucination. One of the teachers laughed last year a year and a half ago when we started the project, said, hallucinations? Haha, what is that? You cannot really talk, right? There's nothing like that. So we're quite different. I'm quite cautious about the time, and I think that's all the time we have, but please do find us. We're going to move on to our last presenter, Caroline. And Caroline would like to ask an answer, and you'd answer, what do you see as important design challenges when building chatbots aimed to tackle sensitive topics or vulnerable user states?
Yes, I think I will continue where I just ended the presentation. What I think for the first study I presented, their Gen AI has helped a lot in actually solving the conversation fallout and understanding the questions. But in the second project, I think the balance between providing emotional support on the one hand and being transparent on the other hand, so that the user actually knows that they're not talking to a real person, is an important trade-off. And we also saw in our studies that, for example, telling the people like, hi, I'm a chatbot, I cannot understand you as a real person, really diminish the trust that they had in how the system would perform, whereas the system would perform the same compared to when the transparency queue was not there. On the other hand, if the system would say like, hi, I'm a chatbot, I cannot understand you as a real person, but I'm developed by experts who know how to talk with you when you're reporting these instances online, that this was received much better. So that indeed, not only stressing the limitation, but also like stressing that the chatbot has reliable sources that have built it.
Absolutely, and I think there's an element of humanizing the AI there, both the positive side of it for support, but also the dangers. I came across a study that said that it took only a few seconds for somebody to be directed to the wrong information, or even dangerous information for them, using one of the, well-known, popular AI tools. Any comments from the audience at all, or questions before we move on to our final question for the next minute or so? Yes, please.
Hi, this is really, really thoughtful, and I appreciate the content so much. Question, Daniel, you mentioned adding to the prompts elements for personification to really make the chatbot more human. Could you expand on that, like beyond, I think you said you're the example was you're a fun travel assistant or something of that nature. Can you expand like what other areas of the prompt that you put in that personification?
Yes, so I will be quick. I think we need to conclude fast. Thank you for the question. So one of the things, this might be simple, but giving the chatbot a name as well. That's very important to make it feel really like personal. So what name to that? And the way we did it before GenAI and after GenAI, completely different. Before GenAI, we created intents with a lot of sample sentences about how to chit-chat with a user. But now with GenAI, then, as you were saying, we have a lot of prompts saying that you are a very happy travel agent that is very productive, that really wants to help and ask clarification questions and greet the customer in this way, and apologize when things are not working. So we have we put a lot of prompts to make that personification there. Yeah. We can talk about that later.
Thank you so much. I know that's all the time we had for, but we wanted to leave you with one word that describes for you these essential values we talked about today. For me, it's going to be co-creation. What about you, Daniel?
Respect to the users.
It's one word.
Respect.
Respect. Okay.
Transparency.
Inclusivity.
Excellent.
Thank you. Could we get a really warm applause for our panelists?